Well, Jesus had a heart for the poor. Did you know that? God made provision for the poor in the Old Testament in many ways. Today, Sherman Haggerty is going to speak to us about his ministry with the poor, the downtrodden, and I'm looking forward to that. Come share with us, Sherman.
Thank you. So first off, I want you to know that I struggled with this message, putting it together so it would be informative and make sense. But the bottom line is I want to tell you this is a recruitment message. It's most of what I've been doing for the past few years, raising money and recruiting people to the cause. So the first thing a speaker needs to know is his audience. In most respects, demographically speaking, I probably sit right in the middle of this group. I'm married, I'm in my mid-70s, I lived in El Dorado Hills for 30 years, I worked for a Fortune 500 company for 30 years. However, philosophically, based on my work experience of the last 11 years on the topic of homelessness, I might have moved away from some of you philosophically, but I hope to provide a Christian basis for this presentation that I'm trying to create today and for the expectations. So I was here 2 years ago and made a presentation about the state of homelessness in the region, which at the time was bleak. Federal mandates negatively impacted our local continuum of care that had been keeping a lid on homelessness for 2 decades through cooperative efforts. Not much has changed in the last 2 years. So I came to talk to you about an additional approach if we ever want to bring this problem under control. Simply stated, everyone needs to be engaged with the population. Hence the recruitment pitch. More on why and how in a few minutes. But I have witnessed their potential value to our communities, and it's changed my opinion about the population greatly, and what needs to be done to improve the outcomes. I actually wrote a book about it in 2019. But I'm currently working with an organization called Volunteers of America, and it's a national professional organization. We're in 32 cities. Main offices in Washington, D.C., and like I said, they've been around since 1896. We are organized as a Christian church. We call ourselves the Church Without Walls. Our ministry provides service and care to the disenfranchised. VOA was originated in 1896 in New York, and the Northern California affiliate opened in 1911. So we've been serving this community for 114 years, but I bet you there's people in this room who have never heard of us. We currently care for approximately 1,400 people every day locally, providing 60,000 meals a month and other vital services, all designed to help them eventually become independent again. So my association with the VOA started as a corporate partner. At the time I was working for a national home builder, Lennar. Very briefly, from 2000 to 2008, we engaged with VOA as part of Lennar's community service mandate. We worked on improvements to several of their programs and did special events for their clients. During this period, senior management at VOA asked me if I would serve on the local board affiliate, which I did from 2005 to 2013. I was forced to term off in 2014, but the chief operating officer at the time asked me if I would consider coming on as an employee to oversee their largest program compilation at Mather campus. Mather was serving 500 homeless individuals in 3 separate transitional housing programs at that time. I said I would take it on, and I made a 2-year employment commitment. I am now in the 11th year of my 2-year commitment. Mather was a homeless transitional housing program that focused on employment readiness and training designed to move people out of homelessness for good. We specialized in barrier reduction, community building, and personal care. The program was extremely successful, winning 2 national awards, and literally hundreds of people went on to live independent lives out of homelessness. The program was defunded, started in 2016, and officially closed in 2019 for a lot of reasons that are very sad. Whoops, a little early there. Accepting that job, I had no idea what I signed up for. I did not anticipate the emotional impact of going from a corporate culture where people were driven by accomplishment and opportunity and focused on their future, to a world of people who were broken and couldn't plan the next few hours, let alone their future. My initial work there included interviewing homeless clients who were hoping to get in. The questions and answers were on personal history, including the events that led them to becoming homeless and the consequences of their actions. I heard about lives filled with trauma starting at a very young age, including introduction to alcohol and drugs, usually before 12 years old, divorce, violence, childhood sexual assault, and gangs. Most had become homeless and given up on school before junior high. Many had turned to criminal activities just to survive. 85% of our clients had criminal records. 80% had a history of severe substance abuse, which usually started before or right at the time they became homeless. And many of those substance abuse issues led to mental health issues. Not one person I remember had an active bank account when they showed up, and very few had been employed during the previous 5 years. These people had literally dropped out of society. I remember coming home and telling Rita that I might not be emotionally tough enough for that job. I was shocked by the depth of harm and mistreatment people had forced to endure, and the capacity of people to abuse others, their children, their spouses, and themselves. I was also confused about the short-term and long-term impacts of those experiences, and now have become increasingly curious about what options might be left to those who have suffered from what looks like evil in the world. During my tenure with VOA, I was given the opportunity to become an ordained minister with the church. In addition to the Bible studies, I was required to develop a research project that would be archived for future use by the organization. At that time, I had spent 4 years at Mather. So I chose to study trauma and the impact that it had on God's design for human living and ultimately this population, and what healing might look like. I attended 3 conferences studying trauma over the next 2 years, one at Duke, one at Princeton, and one at the University of Southern California, and wrote a pretty good stack of books on the topic to try to better understand the impacts. But I started my research at the very front of the Bible by looking at God's design and purpose for us. Beginning in Genesis chapter 127, that says, "So God created humankind in his image." Clearly, God took this first step to allow us to be in a relationship with him. The next verse, 28, tells us, God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every other living creature that moves on the ground." That mandate tells us we are created to be in a relationship with God and with each other and to generate goodness in the world. To be fruitful and fill the world requires a body that's wired for care, empathy, sexual desire, and pleasure. To reign and rule over life requires a body that's wired for movement, curiosity, adaptability, caution, and management of risk and danger. This wiring is miraculously in place and ready to go in the mother's womb, and is made evident in every level, from single cells to brain structures to the whole body system throughout the course of our human development. Before we take our first breath, God has equipped us with a body of amazing, intricate cocktail of biochemicals that send messages to receptive brain areas and drive us toward connection with one another as signals fear when that connection is not safe. We are equipped with specialized cells and structures throughout the brain, all designed to work in concert and provide unity within the body and mind within the context of relationships. When connection happens well, these biochemical cells and brain structures prompt us to approach our world instead of withdrawing from it, to explore it with an unbridled sense of freedom, of awe, play, and connection. System-wide, the sympathetic part of our nervous system gears our body up for approach behaviors by increasing heart rate, respiration, getting our blood pumping, and supplying us with energy to go, 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 and engage our world. Truly, we are created to be fruitful and multiply, to be in relationships and to generate goodness in the world. We are motivated and rewarded by accomplishment and love, and we only achieve true peace when we are in harmony as a whole community and as one. Our God has given us a moral compass that provides us with a clear sense of right and wrong and of good and evil when it comes to assessing our behavior and our relationship to others in the world. In the womb, we are all truly equal with our preparation to live a fruitful life. This body and mind is designed and equipped to provide us with these tools to live out His mandate for our entire life. They don't wear out. God's plan for abundant life is built on a foundation of relationships. Relationship with Him, relationship and connection with one another, relationship and harmony with the entire community. We have been perfectly made, you all know that. But what happens to this perfect creation in a world where sin, in the form of trauma, intercedes without warning? Unfortunately, there's no shortage of these experiences in the world today. Combat experiences, rape, incest, battering, criminal assault, life-threatening diseases, serious accidents, sudden death of loved ones, radical terrorists, and natural disasters. How is God's design impacted by evil, a term that is unfortunately reserved for human interaction? And how can we use our understanding of God's design to promote healing and recovery from these devastating circumstances? It's critical to understand that trauma causes an all-out assault on one or more of our perfect design capabilities, and in doing so fractures our foundations needed to fully engage with others in their community. So let's take a little closer look at trauma. I fear that trauma has become overused and we sometimes miss the true definition, but the DSM definition, which stands for Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which you don't care about. Trauma is a disruption of the holistic sense of life by unwanted, uncontrollable, and intrusive circumstance that damage our integrity, which is our personal agency, our ability to exist in some form of comfort in life in general, and threaten our existence. A big part of trauma is the fact that it's life-threatening. And it's interesting that two people can experience the exact same event standing side by side. One person may be traumatized for the rest of their life, and the other person really has no impact whatsoever. We don't know why that happens, but many people are impacted, and that is pervasive in the homeless population. I recently picked up this additional book about trauma, and in the very beginning, I just want to read the opening paragraph. One does not have to be a combat soldier or visit a refugee camp in Syria or the Congo to encounter trauma. Trauma happens to us, our friends, our families, and our neighbors. Research by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention has shown that 1 in 5 Americans was sexually molested as a child. One in 4 was beaten by a parent to the point of a mark being left. And 1 in 3 couples engage in physical violence. A quarter of us grew up with an alcoholic relative, and 1 in 8 witnessed their mother being beaten or hit. I find those numbers staggering. I'm actually surprised that the homeless population isn't larger than it is, or more people don't drop out when they are robbed of their ability to live a life that has all the necessary tools for a fruitful existence. In addition to having no physical assets, the homeless have to start from an extreme emotional deficit. Poverty is the constant companion of homeless. Financial poverty and relational poverty. And I'm really talking about relational poverty more today. It is the most damaging. I think the homeless population is probably the most ignored, left out group in our society. But what are we supposed to do with this information? Well, let's start with understanding misplaced fault and misunderstood responsibility. First, we need to understand that each human being's welfare and each human being's difficulties are irrevocably tied to each other. I am as thou art. Even though we rarely see it this way, sin and evil are not solely the result of individual wrongdoing, but are deeply institutionalized, structural, and systematic. I want to read that again. Even though we rarely see it this way, sin and evil are not solely the result of individual wrongdoing, but are deeply institutionalized, structural, and systematic. It might be hard to understand, but this happens when we display the following behaviors: turning a blind eye to another's misfortune, being judgmental without the facts, ignoring the presence and value of those who have been impacted. We should understand that rich and full personalhood is only made possible by deeply belonging to community and its ancestors. History and culture are part of our moral conundrums, so how can we help healing and recovery? We can start by understanding what healing from trauma is. Post-traumatic difficulties are not contained events or separate elements of a person's life. They are pervasive, ongoing, and permanent substructures of the soul that impact the psyche, whether it's realized at the conscious level or not. They're not like memories of your childhood beach vacation. They sit on a person's shoulder and are there every day to remind them there's a reason for their fear, their anxiety, and their shame. Healing from trauma should be understood as restoration to the greatest day-to-day functional wholeness possible through a process of mending. Mending implies restoring something that has been flawed or distorted or harmed. It recognizes flaws that need correcting and points to positive results, not problematic beginnings. Healing does not imply the completion of events as much as it signals the establishment of the implementation of a process. It's like physical therapy for the soul. Whether we are discussing healing or restoration from trauma, there are certain commonalities that apply in all cases. Being a non-judgmental listener is vital to facilitate the start of healing. Those willing to be a listener for trauma victims are providing an immense gift, providing they avoid to try to provide solutions. But not everyone can be an effective listener. It can be very difficult and traumatic in its own right, hearing another person's trauma, but there are other ways that we can choose to engage with the homeless when the opportunity arises. And I really wanted to talk to you about two commonalities that we can use when we engage with the homeless, if you have that opportunity. The first is kindness. Kindness is the instrument that God uses to open the heart to healing and begin the process of restoration. It is the means God uses to transform fear, hardness, cruelty, and despair. Without kindness, the heart will be bound to the repetition of past trauma in the present. There are three key elements to kindness. One, it deeply touches the heart and is undeserved. Two, the heart of kindness is hospitality. Good hospitality welcomes with open arms, receives with pleasure, and honors others with goodness. Three, a kind heart pursues without the need to corner or catch. The disappointed heart accepts that nothing is going to change, and survival depends on the ability to look at heartache from a distance. Kindness calls the heavy heart to struggle honestly with God. Jesus can bear our questions and our rage, and he doesn't turn away in either fear or disgust. Rather, he moves towards us without overtaking us or intruding, and offers kindness that sinks life into our heart. It's a great example to follow. A heart that is open to suffering and open to receive kindness will know joy. Joy is not the absence of heartache, but the capacity to know that despair never has the final word. The second commonality that we can use when we're dealing with this population is forgiveness. For Christians, moral living centers on forgiveness. Forgiveness is the release of debt or an obligation or structure that holds us in bondage to the past. Forgiveness is complicated moral injury, sometimes may be used to avoid accountability or even to perpetrate harm. We are warned not to let the sun go down on unaddressed anger. The reason for this warning is that bitterness, rage, slander, and every form of malice opens our heart to evil, allowing it to gain a foothold in our heart. The more hatred we have for those who do us harm or scare us, the more bondage we create, not only with persons we despise, but also with the one who is the father of lies and hatred. I often hear, well, I'm not I don't hate the population. I just don't engage with them. I came across this saying, this is indifference isn't much better than hatred. It's simply hatred with a blank face. Jesus tells us we have the power to bind and loosen on this earth what will be bound and loosed in heaven. Matthew 16:19 and 18:18. We are not bound to deceit, lies, and contempt. We are to loosen our heart from every judgment, accusation, and mockery of evil. It is important to understand from the start that the process of healing trauma is not an event or the completion of an established sequence of steps. The truth is, traumatic impact must be engaged again and again as the heart matures and has new awareness, insight, and freedom. You know, I saw this in the experiences of people coming through Mather when they first got there, and it's certainly been a while before since anybody had really cared for them in any way. And initially, there's a resistance to believing that someone cares enough about you to engage on a very personal level and work for your betterment. But as that process is repeated over and over and over again, you can see their heart warm up and true change start to take place. We learn from the encounter in the upper room with the disciples of Jesus in the Gospel of John, scars never go away, but their meaning and power can grow. As new freedom and choice provide access to even deeper understanding, we can only move out of ourselves to bless if there has been movement inward to receive blessing, and we can only receive blessing to the degree we desire to give it away. So let me try to summarize. In case I've kind of gotten all over the board here. If you're waiting for the government to solve homelessness, good luck. There's obviously no track record of success. They can provide much needed dollars and physical resources to use in assisting the process, but not actual solutions. These issues can only be solved and it's never going to be completely solved, but we can certainly make huge improvements if the entire community is involved and invested and cares about one life at a time. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the story of the kid and the starfish on the beach. That's kind of the analogy I would use. The more that we are willing to engage with disenfranchised and troubled people and show that there's caring out there that they didn't really believe was there, the more opportunity we have to have a huge impact. I personally believe relational poverty can be greatly impacted by individuals, and it's the one big key to overcoming homelessness as it exists today. As a reminder, the reason I'm so passionate about this topic is the fact that I have witnessed firsthand, hundreds of times, how caring and nurturing this population has turned around people who you would have never guessed had a chance to become productive, inclusive members of our society. Many from Mather have gone on to be business owners, valued employees, social workers, homeowners, and neighbors. They're attending your churches. Their children are attending your schools. The difference between them and those still on the street started with one person extending a hand. But I'm a major gifts officer for the agency, so I have to tell you that if you don't feel you can engage personally, you consider making a financial contribution to VOA. Just go check out our website. But I am asking everyone just to do something because it will take all of us to make an impact that's needed.